Sunak's had the phone call. Why do you think it took so long for Netanyahu to answer the phone?
Well, good morning, Nicola and Jeremy. I think it took so long for that call to take place because it was scheduled for Monday. But as we have seen, the Israeli cabinet has been deep in conclave trying to work out how to respond to what amounts to a declaration of war by what your earlier correspondent called a rogue state, Iran. And let's not forget that Iran has been responsible for investing something like £15 billion into its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, doing their dirty work for them in trying to drive the state of Israel into the Mediterranean Sea. For that is the policy of the mullahs in Tehran. And so I think it's understandable that, and indeed it is welcome, that the Israeli government is taking very careful deliberation before taking action in retaliation to that strike of 30 cruise missiles. Imagine that happening to the United Kingdom. I mean, this could have caused untold damage in Israel and loss of life had it not been for the effectiveness of the ground-based air defense, which Israel has, and the spontaneous support of its allies, the United States, United Kingdom, France and Jordan.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, Sir Gerald, on that, I obviously agree with just how, with you on that, just how terrifying it must have been for Israeli people. We both know people who were there and witnessed those rockets coming towards them. Thank goodness they were intercepted. But as a point of interest, what would the UK have done if one of our consulates had been attacked and some of our senior figures had been killed?
I suspect we would have retaliated, but we'd have thought very carefully about it before we did. But in our case, of course, we are not engaged in a policy of trying to annihilate another country, and that is the official policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And therefore, Israel has been subject to attack for years from missiles fired from Lebanon and from Gaza by Iran's proxies. So this was only another development in a continuing conflict between the two countries.
Sir Gerald, forgive me, this will probably take me a while, and I hope you'll understand. I'm looking at this in a wider context. We were talking earlier about Netanyahu, who many in Israel blame for the horrors of October the 7th. Many people say that if that hadn't happened, he'd be out by now, and war for him and dealing with this whole issue, moving away from, he's not talking about a two-state solution, is imperative to him staying there. What happened at the weekend has strengthened his position, my friend, because it was 2 weeks ago where people were jumping up and down in this country saying, should we be sending weapons to Iran? Should we be doing Israel, rather? Should we be doing that? Should we be? And all of a sudden, Iran launches these missiles, some of which land inside Israel, and the whole global world gets behind and talks about that terror axis that I've gone on about with Tobias Ellwood for months, and people have accused me of being a warmonger. Russia and China and Iran are the fearsome opponents, and the world needs to wake up to that. I don't like what I see in Gaza in any way. I hated what I saw Hamas doing. They're a terrorist organisation. But the Iranians, as you quite rightly say, have sponsored these terrorist groups. And I think we're focusing on saying, how will Israel respond? How is the world going to respond to Iran, Sir Gerald Howarth? That's my question.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Jeremy. When I was a defense minister, I had a classified briefing on Iran. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you what was contained in that classified briefing. All I can tell you is that I was astonished, having had that briefing, that in 2015, the United States, promoted by Obama, United Kingdom and others, signed this agreement with Iran, trying to come to terms with them, trying to restrain them and stop them building an atomic weapon. It just seemed to me that it was a futile exercise. And I think it is one of the more sensible things that President Donald Trump did when he removed the United States from that agreement. And now everybody can see exactly what this country is made up of, that is Iran. And let us not forget that what we saw happening to Israel on Saturday night is precisely what Russia has been doing day in, day out, now for 2 years, with the active support of Iran providing Russia with weapons to deliver this brutality to the people of Ukraine. They are, as your correspondent said a moment ago, they are a rogue state. China is another rogue state, I am afraid. And we all know that Russia is a rogue state. And when Ben Wallace says that his experience as Secretary of State for Defense has led him to the conclusion that the only way you can deal with a bully is to hit the bully hard, I agree with that. But I do think Israel has two options now. One is to follow that advice from Ben Wallace. But I'm not quite sure what that hard smack in retaliation for what Iran did on Saturday night, what form it will take. I think Israel and its allies have got to think very, very carefully about exactly how do you retaliate, if you retaliate at all. How do you retaliate without igniting a Middle East-wide conflagration? That's the first option. The second option is to do what President Joe Biden said, was to, in a nutshell, take the win, i.e., their attack on Iran, on Israel, failed miserably. 320 weapons sent into Israel, all but 5 of them destroyed by Israel's air defense and by its allies. It was a complete failure from Iran's point of view.
And however, the advice therefore being that perhaps they should take that as a win in and of itself, Israel, the fact that they were able to defend themselves with the help of the allies. But unfortunately, we've run out of time, Sir Gerald.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this morning.